Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. With me in the studio, Diana Rotich, Ivy Mushoki, Angelina Kai, Chalimo Njoroge, and Jackie Madaga. I thank you for your company here on the broadcast. We as well welcome your contributions. The hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Let's now take a look at what the president said yesterday, ladies, and this he presented this before the caucus of the 7 governors, G7, here in the county of Nairobi, where he said that his government will deliberately work on a plan that will ensure, directing the party chairperson, Cecily Mbarire, who happens to be the first woman governor of Embu County, that we ought to be very deliberate about how then going forward in future will be choosing the candidates for respective positions. If the presidential candidate is of the male gender, then the opposite sex should be on the ticket with him, and the vice versa applies. Coming to you first, Akai, how assuring and satisfying is this coming from the head of state, who not only made this statement, but just some months into his presidency, in December 2022, he wrote a memo to Parliament calling for the addressing of the gaps in terms of gender through initiatives that includes nomination and ensuring that we meet the constitutional threshold. Is this guarantee satisfying?
Thank you, Ayub. First, I am a woman with disability. And I know we have many women with disabilities here in Kenya. And in the past, we have felt that we have been left within the cracks of, women-led organizations. We call them the mainstream, and disability organizations for that matter. So women issues, when you talk about women, without looking at the diversity, then it's like we are doing an injustice to a group that has been marginalized for the longest time possible. So even as we're talking about the 2/3, we're talking about the 50-50, we're talking about our president, and thank you very much for saying that you are going to support women in actualizing the agenda of women and in ensuring that they get the space in leadership positions. Women with disabilities, what about the women with disabilities? Do we have a piece of cake within the main cake? Do we have? Or it's about the people without women without disabilities, and without looking at the diversities that come with, women. We have women who are with disabilities, we have women coming from the marginalized communities, we have women with, different, we have different categories of women. So how are we bringing them on board so that we don't seem to not be deliberately supporting them wholly, but we are supporting just, a set group of women. So for me, it's a good cause. The president really, that's something that when implemented is something to be celebrated. But for me, I just want to see the country move to the right direction, not the talks, but walking the walk. We want to see it happen. I want to see our women with disabilities being part of the whole processes, from the leadership position in the nationals to the basic community level. I want to see our women with disabilities and also persons with disabilities in general, because once we are not there, that means the resources allocated in the counties, for example, or even the national government does not reflect the needs of everyone. If we are not represented within the counties and even the community level, that means the policies that are made are not inclusive. So Kenya did ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. In Article 29 talks about participation in political and public life. But then it's a wonderful thing. Once we ratify, that means that it forms part of the Kenyan law. then why are we not implementing it? Why did we see from 2013 a good number of people with disabilities, people with disabilities to be more specific, being nominated in the county's assembly, in the national and all other levels? Then we see in 2017 the numbers dropping down, and now it's even worse. So it goes against the progressiveness. We're supposed to be progressive, but really we are progressive in the other way. We are progressive going downwards rather than going up. So we really need to think of, to come up with deliberate efforts in ensuring inclusion of all, including women with disabilities in all sectors. So I really support the president, and I'm hoping that this is going to be implemented, and we're not going to just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Thank you very much.
Okay, Diana, given what the head of state yesterday said, the one thing that has been lacking was the goodwill from the top, as per the events that have been happening since we promulgated Katiba, and then we went to the first elections in 2013 under this dispensation. But is this a communication of a goodwill now, which appears to be coming from the head of state? And to what extent do you think this can address some of the problems that have been dotting the gender debate in this country?
Yeah. Thank you, Ayub. One of the things that I'm really happy with this current government, is the inclusion part. But we are not really yet there. But they have really tried, and especially on the issue of two-third rule, and of course the inclusion of women and the marginalized, especially for the marginalized community. And we can really see it from the nomination of Senate seat. We have so many women, like for instance Senator AC, who are really doing incredibly well in the procession and things like that. So from what the government, from what the president said yesterday, I think it is a very good will from the sitting government, and the projection of it is that we are really going to have inclusion of women in the leadership position, and especially on the top position. If honestly 2027 we're going to have women running president candidates with a woman as a deputy president, yes. Then it's going to be an eye opener for even us as the young leaders who are really eyeing even being the next governors or the next women rep in our communities. So it is really a goodwill and a projection that this government has that willingness to support women really in this current state of the nation.
Yeah. Jackie, when we talk about this day, yes, it's in terms of its umbrella effect, it's about women. But how then can we bring down the conversation down to the girls who are disabled, and as a champion for the same, and ensure that they are incorporated and there is the friendly environment for them to get educated, to get absorbed, and to get opportunities in life?
So thank you for that. So I'm glad we're talking about this, and especially on the back of the president having made that declaration. The biggest issue usually is the divide that exists between universal declaration that's made by leadership and what actually happens on the ground. So even before we begin to address our young girls who are growing up right now, questions we have to ask ourselves are, what are the reasons why women have not as yet even made it in terms of why do we need a president to declare that women must be included? Why is that a thing that's needed? And we need to then begin to think about what needs to shift in our minds. Because if we do not have a mindset shift that women can lead, women deserve those tickets, women deserve to be seated at leadership tables, women need to be at corporate boards, then that means that we can't even begin to talk about our girls that are coming up right now. So when we do advocacy for girls with disability, we have to think backwards from what is it that has been stopping women from achieving anything, so that we are then able to fix the problem from the source and ensure that our girls are included. So when we're talking about inclusion of girls with disability, we have to ask ourselves whether even our education system is inclusive enough. Are those girls in school? Because if we're talking about women candidates in election, that means that woman must have had a certain level of education, must have gone through the system, must have had certain advantages. So how do we then begin to look at the problems that have been plaguing women? The reason why the kawaida woman is not the one who is at a G7 summit.
Yeah.
Why it's just politicians speaking for us. Why is it that the Mama Mboga who's raising a girl with autism is not the one who is being asked, what are your needs for Women's Day and what do you need for inclusion? So we have to begin to address the social, economic, political injustices that have happened all along the chain, so that we can begin to raise up girls who can then step up to what it is that the president is talking about and what he's aspiring to. Yeah. So our education system is lacking. Persons with disability, children with disabilities, both boys and girls, are not in schools. Mm-hmm. So how do we then even begin to say that they will be included? And I know Angeline has talked about how many, like the Convention on the Persons with Disabilities. Mm-hmm. So unless we begin to take documents like those and ask ourselves, what does this really mean for the young girl who has just had a diagnosis at 2 years old, has had an autism diagnosis at 2 years old, that she can achieve what the president is aspiring to? Yes. What does that really mean? I'd fix the education system to make sure those girls are included, those boys are included with disabilities, fix our economic system to make sure that the advantages that they need economically to be at the table happen, and even look at the parents. What is it that stops a mother from being able to take a child with disability to school? Because that girl with disability who is with the mother in the house, because there's no school that can take her in, will never get to what it is that the president is talking about.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Chelimo, then, when we talk about this day, it will be marked with pomp and celebration, color to that effect. It can be a presidential function for that matter. But how then do we now dilute that to be about the everyday girl, everyday woman's affair, beyond the gestures, and address the very systemic issues that are bedeviling the girls and the other women away from the big day events that celebrated across capitals in the world?
That is, it's very important that we move away from just the day to the everyday actions that we take to ensure that we are continuously investing in women and young girls. And before I get there, let me just share my thoughts on the presidential comments from the G7 strategy launch yesterday. If you look at the previous, so allow me not to celebrate that statement, because in the previous election, this is the only party that didn't have a female deputy president. So this is a catch-up statement, actually. So we need to be careful not to be dragged with that actual statement, but to keep these statements, keep these leaders to account on such statements made. Yeah, and as Jackie is saying, it's not enough for the president to say or to declare that women need to be in leadership. We need action behind it. It comes at the backdrop of the Women Charter that the president signed in public, declaring 50-50, even in his cabinet. We have not realized that. So we need to be intentional to both celebrate such commitments, but to keep government accountable on those promises that have not yet been realized. Back to how do we move beyond the pomp? My organization, PAMSIV, is also today celebrating International Women's Day at the Arboretum. And we have many organizations across different counties. We have the national event in Embu. And beyond the day and the declarations that will be made today in the different events and different platforms, we need to ensure that these actions or these declarations are actually taken into consideration in programming. We need to hold government accountable to commitments made today. We need to hold civil society needs to continue to hold each other accountable. We need to continue to work with the community to advance this. It has to be systemic. It has to be inculcated in our practices. We need to look at education sector, for example. We have good policies. We have good policies against FGM, against early marriages, and against systemic issues that disadvantages women. So we need to have programs that work around that.
Okay.
So beyond the pomp, beyond the day, we need to take the commitments that are made today in different platforms and ensure that these are implemented systemically by all actors that are relevant.
Advocate Leila Duale, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for your time. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
How key is this day to you and other women across the world? That was my first question.
Well, I must say that this day marks a significant journey that we have come, of course, as women, because back in the years, women would not even be involved in such conversations.
Yes.
Women were considered to be the people to take care of the home, and that's just it.
Yeah.
But over the years, we've seen that women are much more than that. Women are intelligent, women are smart, women can take up these leadership positions and take countries to greater heights. Allow me to comment on what President William Samoei Ruto said yesterday. Truth is, most of these leaders have been in government since the 2010 promulgation of the Constitution.
Yes.
They have been there. And of course, the Constitution has championed the equality of women. Seeing them comment these things now, yet when bills were presented before Parliament, they failed to vote these bills in, is a blow to our faces as women. Because when we had the Duale 1 bill, which was proposed back in 2015, which sought to of course, amend Article 97 and 98, to ensure that, of course, women are given equal opportunities in the National Assembly and the Senate, most of these leaders, they voted it out. We had the Chepkonga, which came again. Of course, for the Chepkonga, it was more about progressive realization. Why do we have to put women at bay, the rights of women at bay? Of course, claiming progressive realization. Yet when it comes to the finance bill, we're saying that it has to be implemented now. To be honest, that means that the rights of women are not valid in this country. We cannot move on like that, because when we say something, is subject to progressive realization, we do not place a time limit to it. It means it can take as long as people might wish it to take. The Constitution of Kenya, of course, in itself, it's not a self-executing document. That means we need people with goodwill. We need leaders who will be able to champion the rights of women to ensure that the Constitution of 2010 is implemented in wholesome and not just in parts as it is going. So this day, we should not just celebrate it. We should have deep, of course, reflections as to where we are as women and where we are going. Because as of now, the president had the option of ensuring his cabinet comprises of 50% women. He did not do that. So he cannot claim, saying that, of course, women, there will be a woman who will be a running mate come 2027 or 2032. That just favors his narrative as of now. We cannot allow ourselves to be duped like that.
Ivy, I mean, let's then talk about the dichotomy here and the contrasting elements. First, he was the only presidential candidate in 2022 with no woman running mate. To tick that box. In December, to an extent, he redeemed that. On face value, he wrote to Parliament seeking the implementation and the realization of the two-thirds gender principle. He sent that memo to the bicameral Parliament. Here we are again. He says going forward, that will be how the future will look like politically. But is it not again an irony that his own cabinet, that he promised to women 50% shares in his cabinet, it's not been realized?
First of all, I want to agree with my sister, because the truth is this two-third gender rule has been something we've been pushing from 2010 during Mwai Kibaki, the late Mwai Kibaki's regime. And we were moving from a gender upheaval to now a gender-sensitive kind of docket. And I believe that the president, with what he spoke yesterday, is in line with what should have already been. It should have been in line with what should have already taken place years ago. So, in my opinion, I believe that we just need to focus on women-centric ideas, women-centric driven agendas, women-centric collaborations, so that we can be able to, for us to show them what exactly we have. For example, in Namibia, they have a policy, it's called the Zebra Policy, whereby if a position has been put into the gazettement or what is it, an organization has to do the 50-50 parity. What this means is that if the position is of maybe 2 people, there has to be 2 women and 2 men both being interviewed. And that is why they've come to a conclusion whereby that Zebra Policy has enhanced them, that if you watch their politics and what is going on, that is why a woman is able to vie for politics. A woman now is actually running for president in Namibia, and that is where we are heading. And as the young people and as the women who are even wanting to vouch and take upon these seats, we need our policies to be enhanced so that we can be able to vouch for political seats, for seats even with regards to even negotiations, because we've seen that women are very good, especially with regards to peace building and peace and execution, because we know how to understand, we know how to empathize. And I believe that our policies are not good enough. And as much as our governors, our female governors are starting an initiative where they're calling it G8 to G16, I feel that we need to actually sit down with them and tell them what is it that's lacking, what is it that's missing, because we need more women, and especially these young women who are feeling that the political seats are not yet for them. We need to encourage them. There need to be spaces, open conversations on how they can be given the opportunity to lead. And there's so many young people who want to be even, and that's why we categorize women and youth in the same bracket. Because when you educate a woman, when you give a woman a chance to be able to propel her community, even the young girls are able to be propelled. So it's a wholesome initiative, and I feel that it all comes down to our policies, and we need to really rally our advocates and every society involved to be able to change our policies into a zero zebra policy that can be able to have women in leadership.
Angeline, coming to you, the theme for this year is Invest in Women to Accelerate Progress in 2024. How does this investment start from the very bottom of the pyramid, where the girl gets equal treatment as is the boy? It doesn't mean that we'll be locking out the boys out of opportunities, but given that the growth process at the family level, which is the unit that informs how as a society we do exist, is fair enough, so that we can talk about that investment from early years of a girl's life?
Thank you very much, Ayub. The principle of the UN CRPD that Kenya ratified talks about inclusivity. It talks about inclusion. And when I'm talking about inclusion, I need to say that it starts from the basic, from the family level, going upwards. And so for women with disabilities, they are first okay, we have girls with disabilities. So from the time they are girls, how are they part of the basic units, the family? How do they go to school? Do they participate in when growing up, when they are women, do they participate in the normal, national events, community events, and all that? Are they part of the discussions? Do they participate, for example, are they on the table, or are they, do they come in as an afterthought, It's really important for us to think of women, girls, and from the basic unit, like I said, and at the same time, bringing them on the table, let them be part of the discussions that take place in all events, in the nationals, in policies, in the county system, in allocations of funds, so that they are not left at the margins, but are brought at the center. So for me, I believe that even as we talk about investing, let us not leave anyone behind. Let us be deliberate and come up with regulations and policies. But I don't think I'm not talking about coming up, because the policies are there and the legislations are there. It's just to ensure that these policies and all the regulations are friendly, that they accommodate every human being, because a right is a right. It doesn't matter that you cannot be denied your rights based on your disability or based on religious and other components. So let us be deliberate in ensuring that we bring issues of women and girls at the forefront. And when we're talking about women, let us think of who are we leaving behind as women in the mainstream. For example, we have beautiful ladies here, one representing the marginalized communities, the other one the youth. So I will want to know maybe later, how are they incorporating issues around youths with disabilities, issues around women with disabilities in the pastoralist communities, because we have to infiltrate all these levels, because we find sometimes we are brought on board when discussions have been made, they have sat down and they think, oh, okay, we have people with disabilities issues, women with disabilities issues are not dealt with, so how can we bring them on board during the last minute? So we don't want to come as an afterthought. We want to be part of these whole processes, from the basic family to the the bigger levels of Thank you.
And Jackie, then this brings me to the question of discriminatory traditional practices, and this now comes to the aspect of the societal makeup. Yes, that's the part of the investment, but this girl or boy leaves the house because it's a gender question. Then there's the larger society where his family unit competes against the other in terms of inculcation of values, morals, discipline, and for which one informs the other. If that doesn't happen at his home level, then he will be vulnerable to the outside. Then comes in the aspect of peer influence and pressure. I mean, how can we converge all those efforts and look at these discriminatory traditional practices, which are somewhat holding back the progress of women?
Thank you, Ayub. So one of the things that really surprises me a lot of times is that all of us here are products of mothers. Everybody was born by a mother. So that means that there's a mother who spent time really doing those basic things while you were really a baby. And I think that's what you're asking, like those early years and the exposure then that happens on the outside. So even when we begin to think about implementing policies and things that cause women not to attain much in future, we have to go back to the family unit and to begin to ask ourselves, are we doing the right things in the home? Are mothers supported in the home? So that doesn't matter whether it's in a home where the mother is a single parent or a home where the mother is in a marriage, or maybe, whatever the family unit is. But are we supporting these women to raise their children in the way that they should be raised? And are they having every resource that's possible? If you look at what happens in Western countries, from the moment a child is born, the mothers usually know what it is that they can take advantage of that is given by the government to make sure that their children turn out right. Whether that's access to education, access to disability inclusion, healthcare, everything from the very, very beginning. So if you have in the family unit mothers that are struggling to even achieve healthcare, to even make sure that this child who's been born with a disability has the right diagnosis, is getting the right therapies from an early age, even before that child leaves the home, then they're defeated. So right from the family unit, when we begin to distill policies and begin to look at where it is that we should be pouring resources, it should be looking at the basic family unit and trying to figure out how can we make sure that the outcomes from a family level are good outcomes, so that as the child leaves then the home, they are living empowered, they are living able to go and achieve whatever it is that they're supposed to be achieving. But also because we are always going back, everybody goes home if they have a home. Because we are always going back home, what is it that we are doing to empower women consistently, always, constantly, so that they know the next best thing to do with their children, no matter where it is that child comes from?
Okay. Diana, despite the celebration of this day and the piecemeal strides that have been made in Kenya and other countries around the world, there's still the problem, isn't it, you agree with me, of women facing obstacles in terms of owning and utilizing land and property. And mind you, they form the lion's share of the workforce or/laborers in farms in the agriculture sector across the country, yet when it comes to ownership, they own more than 1% of the land in Kenya. I mean, how can this be addressed from disparity perspectives and bring them up on equivalence level?
I would like to quote something from the Bible. It says, I don't know in which book, but it says that my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And that is why we are really trying to really give information through advocacy, going through media, and really speak to, especially to, from the community that I come from, to speak to the women that even them, they have a right to own anything, including land in their homes. So we have not been left behind, because we have those women who already came before us, and even to pave way for the rights of women and inclusion in the community. So we keep going on. We are also trying to see on how we can really bring women on board, and even to form such organizations like what I'm doing currently. And you'll find that with those few steps that we are making as women, it paves way to realize that we can also be part of this community, because we have seen families that God forbid, those who've lost their fathers. But women have come out strong and raised their children despite maybe having some challenges in maybe poverty level, but they've really come together and put their families together and even take their children to school, like some of us. So it is important for us to really empower the women back, even in the at the grassroots level, so that they can also realize the role they play in the community. And also we've seen, I'll just like to mention like Homa Bay County. They're really doing so well, and we've just came to realize what Homa Bay has from the present woman led, who is the Homa Bay governor. Gladys Wanga. So there's that potential that we have as women, and we will only realize that if we're given the space. So what we can just say this morning, that we really need that space, but again, you cannot be given that space if you can't fight for it. So we have to come forward as women and claim the space that we have.
How key is education in that fight? Because for you to fight in a space where it's cutthroat, then you need skills, is it, and which comes through education?
For sure. That is why I'll just give again an example of what we do as an organization. We are really running back to school campaigns, especially at those periphery where we are having a lot of conflicts going on. And for example, like I'll just mention in West Pokot, we have like 9 schools who are closed last year, and up to date they are not yet open. So you find that again, issue of education come in, but we cannot be silenced, because they have the rights to education, and education is an equalizer in this world. So we really have to go back to our communities, and especially the marginalized community, to take back our children to school, because once they go to school, they get the skills, they get the knowledge, and now they'll have their own way to maneuver and get to where they are supposed to be, because we cannot just sit back and watch the others perish and things like that. So it is important for us even to advocate for the girl child education, because I believe once you empower a woman, the whole community is empowered.
Okay. Yes, Selema, you have a point?
I completely agree. I know we need to be very intentional in especially communities that are more disproportionately disadvantaged, with women or girls going to school. Early pregnancies, we saw as the Kenya Human Rights Commission today was indicting governors that have children that are increased number of pregnancies. I know our county, Nairobi, tops, but seeing counties that are women-led, seeing Nakuru County, seeing Machakos County in the list is very unfortunate now because they are women-led, and then this needs to be hence a priority that we need to lead from the front. Looking at such that we are making progress. Yes, we are investing in education. We are investing in ensuring girls that are disadvantaged are going to school, but we need to do more. I reflect on that in this day and age, some girls are missing up to 75 days a year of school because they're in their menstrual, it's the time of the month, and they're not able to access sanitary towels, for example. Men, young boys, that's not something they even consider worrying about. So in this time, we need to be very intentional to address those retrogressive cultures and also issues that suppress girls going to school, from FGM to early pregnancies to even access to sanitary towels, for example. Because if we do not address it at that level, this disadvantages them for the rest of their life to access even leadership positions, because then the opportunities that they needed at that time, they are way behind. What has happened now in leadership is that women are sprinting in a marathon because they are starting very far. Their male counterparts are way ahead if it's in empowerment, economically, if it is in education. So for a woman to even catch up and be able to fill such leadership positions, both in politics, in public sector, in private sector, it becomes catch up. And they have to really sprint and find their way. Hence, not many will be able to fill those positions.
Ayub, doesn't that then mean that it goes back to what I was saying about the family unit?
Yes.
Because if we're going to address even issues of girl pregnancies, then we have to ask ourselves, what is it that's lacking? We need to then go backwards to what is it in the family unit that has changed, because all these girl pregnancies are a result of poverty. So what is it that we need to address economically so that these girls who are falling prey to probably, because if you travel across the country and you meet young teenage girls who are pregnant and you ask them the reason why they're pregnant at that age, it goes back to they were looking for something. They were looking for a meal, they were looking for school uniform, they were looking for a textbook. So we need to go back to those issues at the family level that have caused these issues to then become such a problem for the nation.
Yes, Leila, I'll come to you. I'll come to Ivy. Yes, please, proceed.
And just to add on what she's saying, of course, there are other girls who are out there just looking for affection. It goes back to men should be responsible. Most men nowadays, they are lacking in terms of course, showing up and being there, taking their parental responsibility seriously. So, of course, coming back to the family unit, it is imperative for us to realize that comparing to, say in the 80s, in the 90s, where the family unit was comprised of a father, a mother, and the children, things have changed. But that does not mean that children are supposed to suffer in the midst of the change. So men should go back and take their responsibilities seriously.
Is that why we're having these problems, Ivy? I mean, how much is a breakdown in the institution of marriage leading to such problems? Because for the girl, you talk about early pregnancies, which affects higher education progress. For the boy, the impact is that the likelihood of being subscribed into a group that abuses drug or substance, for that matter, then ends up becoming no important person in the community. So how much then do we need to safeguard and immune the institution of marriage?
It all comes down to the mindset theory and the mindset approach. I'm glad my sister talked about the boy child, because the truth is our family homes, our family units are lacking with regards to the roles and responsibilities of what should be done inside the family. The parents are mostly, especially with this generation of ours, it looks like most of them are really, to be honest, they're busy. They're very busy because they're trying to catch up with life, trying to catch up with the economic times, that you're leaving your children behind, not knowing that whatever they're doing or whatever that they're trying to make part of their life will become part of them as they grow up. So the mindset approach and the mindset capability within the home and the family unit is actually a problem. And that's where now we come down to the communities. What is it that our communities are preaching to our young people? What is it our communities are preaching to our parents? What is it our communities are saying that we should do together? The theme of this year is accelerate progress.
Yeah.
I believe that we are heading towards that acceleration, but why is it that the United Nations had to say that accelerate progress, invest in the woman to accelerate the progress? It means that the investing that has to happen within the communities, within the family unit, it needs to be adhered, it needs to be progressed so that these family homes can be taught the simple fundamental basics of the roles and responsibility of a woman, roles and responsibility of a man, so that as they grow up, they will continue growing with these fundamentals and they'll continue entrenching them within the societies. Otherwise, as these people enter towards the society, they're doing exactly the opposite. And on this day, it's something that is it's quite basic, because if you look about it within the history, our young people, our countries, our different continents, especially this continent right now, we used to praise our women. Our women were worshipped. I mean, we had queens like Cleopatra. We had queens from the southern region. We literally used to have these women who are leading the nations. And why is it? It's because we had basics of what a woman was in society. So this basic, it all leads up to the mindset approach. We need to demystify ourselves to understand what the value of a woman is and what the value of a man is. And this needs to be instilled within the family basic unit.
Diana, are we winning the war of the minds, the war of countering the perceptions, the war of ensuring that we dip the perceptions that are held by most communities? We covered a story from Marsabit County where parents are, some, of course there's no wholesale condemnation here, some are going over the border to Ethiopia to go and do FGM on their own girls. I mean, how can this be countered? Because it seems as much as the government is rolling out its effort in terms of policing over what's happening, it seems that we still need to catch up with regards to the mindset.
Honestly, yes, we really have to look for other ways to curb this, because even there are so many other advanced methods of doing this FGM.
Yes.
Because the government has really been on their neck, but now it is advancing. And again, we cannot just sit back. We really have to be and even to fight really for the vulnerable girls who are being undertaken through these very harmful cultural practices. But again, I'll just like to mention about how incredible we women are. Just to go back to history, in 1914 to 1918, women in Europe, they came up to fight against the to fight for withdrawal of war that was in World War I. Again, the same thing happened in I think in Russia, and you find that when women come in, something just happened. It is, I don't know how it is, but it's just miraculous and magical on how we women, when given a chance, we do marvelously, honestly. Just like conceiving, and then that baby grows into your tummy for like 9 months, and then again that baby comes out in a very so there's just something about women that once we are given that potential and that space, we turn things into gold. So it is important for all the stakeholders to come in and make sure that women are included in all aspects of life, because we've proven beyond doubt that honestly we can do it. For example, what our just the other day we've had the LSK president, who is now a lady, and she served as the deputy, and that means that she proven it that she can really do it, and that is why she was now promoted by so many number of young people across the corridors of justice. And that shows you that once we are trusted, and we can really be trusted. And there's this phrase that says, behind a successful man, there's a woman. There's a woman. And even in the Bible, it says, he who finds a wife
finds a good thing.
Yes, and that wife is a woman. So there's just a whole lot about women. Once we are given that space, once we are being empowered, then we can really do it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll sample the feedback and take some questions as well. But Jackie, when we talk about the question, and we'll come and talk about politics as well,
yes.
The question of conflicts and how women bear the consequences. You talk about any given cycle. The drought last year,
yes.
the most vulnerable people, women and children. We went into the flooding, the most vulnerable people, women and children. Now, if you look at conflicts in Baringo County, for example, what you have covered over the past few days is women and children who have been internally displaced.
Yes.
Then how do we, as we talk about the policy question, the investment we talked about, which is this year's theme, also focus on these gendered conflicts that tend to have more effect and bearing on women and girls?
So what you're talking about is actually, I think, historical, that since the beginning of time, the people who will end up holding the child when the man has run away or the man has gone away or gone to war is always the woman. So how we address it is by, in my mind, pouring resources towards it. If we were to sit down and to start analyzing, say, for example, the internally displaced people, why are they internally displaced? It's because there's something that's happening in that region. How do we make sure that these things even stop happening in Kenya today? Should we be really having our internal conflicts that displace women and children? What is it that we need to do at county, at even constituency level that will shift the balance so that when there's conflict that's happening, women and girls know where to run? So recently there's been a lot of talk in advocacy circles around having halfway homes, having rescue homes, places that women can go when they encounter domestic violence, where they can go safely with their children just for a while before they find their feet and going. So we need to begin to positively, aggressively invest in some of these things that give women a resting place, so that if there's conflict in the home, the woman knows where to run, because she's not going to leave her child. When the man is gone, and we see this also in disability a lot, immediately the diagnosis arrives like this. The first person to step out of the room a lot of times is the man. I cannot handle this. This is not my child. We do not have such children in our home, and he's gone. So that leaves the woman with the child trying to figure out where to go. So if we begin to invest in spaces where women can go, to find a landing spot, to find resources that can begin life again, then we will begin to address some of the issues that you're mentioning with internally displaced women and children. That woman is internally displaced because a man did not do what he was supposed to. A man escaped, a man went, a man brought about war. She's been kicked out of safety. Okay. So we begin to create places of safety for women within our communities, and we begin to realize that the protection of a woman actually means the protection of an entire society. For
sustainable tomorrow. Let's now sample the feedback, and I take your final words here as we also talk about how we have progressed from 0 to 3 to 7 women governors. Tells us a lot about also the changing face of the Kenyan society. Here's what you are saying. Arisa Buga says, Happy International Women's Day. We should start by celebrating where we have made progress, such as boys to girl, going to primary schools, which is at 100 to 102, 100 to 106 in secondary. Generally, women should focus on strengthening system within political parties. Babu Michelle K says, women in this country must use their numbers and ability to fight for their space in the society, and more so in politics. Politicians will just make political statements, but most of the time don't actualize them, so it's up to the women themselves. Esawe says, despite significant strides, women continue to face underappreciation. KK's recent promise appears more political than substantive. It's imperative for the president to fulfill commitments to gender equality. Until then, cautious optimism is warranted. Engineer Lazaro says, spirited fight for empowerment has seen good number of women scaling all odds to become very influential in senior positions. Let them keep up the fight and not to depend on much on the political statements made by their male colleagues. Unnamed, on gender inclusivity, persons living with disability have always been played down. Nominations of women in most political parties serves wives, daughters, girlfriends, which was not the purpose of our laws. Let women living with disability be given a chance. Sir Nixon Ndugure says, dear women, the worst thing that you do is not stand up for each other. Practice powerfully coming together in common purpose and common effort that can actually lead to permanently overturning tables where men will be the 1/3. Godi Barasawere says, women folk should emphasize on showcasing their worth in every space they occupy. They should stand up and be counted and always ensure they have a seat on the decision-making table. A minute each. One of the observations made by one of our viewers, Ivy, starting with you, talks about, depending on your numbers, we are 52%. The hashtag that had gone down at some point. Suppose all women in this country vote for a woman presidential candidate. That is outright pathway to State House, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Why is it difficult to happen?
You can tell just by the laughs why it's a bit murky.
Yeah.
But as I said, the first thing I want to just start by saying with regards to this question is that we really need to go back into the drawing books. And as my sister here spoke about, we already have the policies in place, but we don't have the strengthening aspect towards them.
Yes.
As much as, yes, we have now the G7 strategy component going forward, but what about these other societies? How are we getting their point of view within the system, within the structure, so that we can push the aspect of the policies? Okay. The policy approach is very difficult. We are not pushing our policies. We already have these women in the system. We have our women senators. We have our women governors. But why is it that these bills are not being voted for? What are they doing? We have women representatives, but they're not voting for the required bills that are going to help each and every one of us. We saw recently, we had the femicide walk. And we saw how women came together, because when women come together, good things happen. Yeah. And that is something that if we can just actually just come together as women and say, you know what, we need to do number 1, number 2, number 3. Yeah. How is the strategy? How can we do it as a collective effort? And for me, my parting shot would be, kindly, if we can actually call our women in the system together, and we rally each other and say, these are the things from number 1 to number 10 that we need to lobby for. By the time 2027 election comes, we are capable of having a deputy president who's a woman.
Yes, yes, Leila, briefly.
Of course, just to conclude, we are looking at having a possibility of a woman president, not just a deputy, because it is possible. As women, we must look at the possibility of even registering our own political party, because it is evident that we are doing scrambling and partitioning. So we need to take the bull by its horns and go for it, because when we continue discussing matters progressive realization, we might end up having this discussion come the next 100 years. Yeah. So we need to be very radical about it. It's a matter of right. And the more we continue to put this at bay, the more we continue to violate the rights of not just women, but even the future generation, because we are the ones who give birth to leaders in the future.
Thank you. Yes, Chelimo.
Important to say that investing in women is actually a human rights issue. Investing in women is investing in sustainable communities and sustainable development, and doing this as an afterthought disadvantages our country in realizing sustainable development, because it's not it should not be a by the way, it should be the priority that we actually invest in women, in ensuring that they find their space in contributing to the community. I look forward to a time where the 2/3 gender rule conversation will not be a women conversation. Yes. It will be that when we're looking around the room in cabinet, we're trying to find the 1/3 men and not necessarily the 1/3 women. Yeah. And a time where in every step, just the same way we are seeing that now in secondary schools and primary schools, that we are having more women, because that's the population that we have. We have more women generally in our population. So it comes at a good time that we're having this conversation in terms of investing in women. My organization, Forum Civ, with the support from the Embassy of Sweden, is very intentional in granting or providing support to women-led, women-focused organizations, because we know that this fight, this journey, has to have financial investment beyond the talk, beyond the technical support. It must have financial investment. And we continue to do this. What we have seen is even with leadership programs. Today we're talking about women in leadership. We must invest in leadership programs. We have a leadership academy, Awezesha Dada Leadership Academy, that allows women to see other women role models, but also to be mentored as leaders. And we must continue to do this and invest in women for
Yes, Angelina Kai.
Thank you. We must be deliberate in investing in women, and more so investing with all women, including women with disabilities. And so we have a network called the Kenya Network of Women with Disabilities that we empowering champions, the young ones, to get into these spaces, the leadership spaces. And we want to plead with all women-led organizations to try and be more inclusive. Do not leave anyone behind. Let us be more inclusive and champion for the cause of all women, including women with disabilities. And so we are also requesting that policies that are in place are more friendly, are more inclusive, resources allocations are more inclusive. We do not leave anyone behind when allocating all these resources, be it financial or otherwise. Let us be more inclusive. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Asante. Yes, Diana.
My advice to my fellow women, create your space. Once you create your space, then opportunities will come to you, because opportunities come to those who are prepared. And to our parents, continue investing in your girls, in your daughters, because the future is bright, the future is luminous, and the future is women.
Thank you. Yes, Jackie.
So one of the things that I do is I run a parent support group that's called Through the Roof, and our policy is each one reach one. And that's what I want to end with. So each of us as parents of children with disability have the mandate to reach another parent who is not on the forum, to tell them what it is that we are doing in terms of making sure that the gaps for our children are attained. So for us as women, I want us to throw the same challenge to ourselves. Each woman reach one woman. The Bible says older women teach younger women. So how is it that those who are in political spaces and are older in the political space can reach out to younger women in politics? How is it that those who are parenting better, mothering better, can reach out to mothers who are just starting out, so that the issues that we were talking about begin to narrow? So happy International Women's Day to all of us.
Thank you.
And I want to just end on, I guess, a celebratory note to say women do support each other. I've seen it happen. So let's just keep on doing that.
Thank you. Your time is all appreciated, ladies. Diana Rotich is the founder, the Kenya Pastoralist Community Organization. Good morning. And Ivy Mushoki is the Global Youth Parliament East Africa representative. Good morning. Angelina Kai is the Disability Rights Advocate. Good morning to you too as well. Chelimo Njoroge is Forum Civ. Good morning. Your time is appreciated. Leila Duale is an advocate. Your time is equally appreciated. And Jackie Madaga is the Director Resource Mobilization at Daystar University. Your time is all appreciated, ladies, and happy International Women's Day. Up next is Ben Su, and being International Women's Day, the DJ will be a woman, and in his company will be women cyclists. That will be the interesting show coming up here on Hangout Friday here on Citizen Television. Thank you for waking up with us here on the broadcast from Monday to Friday today, and by the grace of God, we'll see you next week on Wednesday at the same time. Till then, good morning and thanks for watching.